perfection is the enemy of good. Like, I feel like a lot of building a business is failing, and you have to be really curious about like why you're failing. I think getting from 0 to 1, you just got to be really gritty and just have almost no social qualms about just like literally doing whatever you got to do to get the company to 1. It really just comes down to sales. If you can sell things and you can market things, everything else will take care of itself. I feel like entrepreneurship is like taking an onion and you're just unpeeling it constantly. And you're like, I think I got to the core. And then you realize, actually, there's 8 more layers to this.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Owner Ops Podcast. I'm your host, Austin Gray. In this episode, I have Hardy Farrow from the Long Acre Company. Hardy bought this business. They offer multiple services in plumbing, HVAC, and even bathroom remodel. So we got deep into the weeds on how he thinks about going and hiring and recruiting great talent for home service businesses. We also kind of got into marketing and Facebook ad strategy at the end. So stick around. Had a lot of fun getting to know Hardy on this one. He is a great operator with a very, very detailed approach. So I'm excited for you guys to listen to it. We've been having a lot of fun with this school group. So if you are a listener, we have a free school group if you are working on building a local service-based business. You can check that out at skool.com. That's skool.com/ownerops, skool.com/OWNROPS. Without further ado, let's jump into the episode.
The same, you have to adapt it for what you're doing. No, through the recruiting, the data, stuff like that, the financials. I don't know. I just like the grind. I don't know how to explain it to people sometimes.
You either love it or you don't.
Right.
You've had a couple exits under your belt at this point. Why do you keep coming back?
I think about my life and 10-year challenges or 5 to 10-year challenges. And I don't know. I feel like it's really fascinating to like take something from like its infancy or toddler stage to like teenager kind of adult stage. And what are all the systems you have to build? What are all the processes? Like, how do you unpack the customer base? Yeah, I don't know. Like, I guess I just like the idea of just thinking through, like, how do you put all these chess pieces on a board and then move them over a couple years span? And I don't know, I find that more interesting than navigating corporate bureaucracy and you trying to play the game to get promoted somewhere. I don't know. It seems a little bold of me to do that.
That's something I think about a lot because, well, actually, I don't think about it a ton, but it does cross my mind consistently, I think is a better way to say it. There will be these times where you do this consistently, and there will be the times where you feel like you're just literally grabbing the boulder at the bottom of the hill and starting to push, and you're like, it really would be so much easier just to go the corporate route.
Do the 8 to 4 W2 thing and like you're done at the end of the day. And I feel like even at Sunday at 10:30 at night, I'm like, my mind is just thinking about things. Even if I'm not like actively working, I'm just like, okay, what are we about to do this week? Let me think through it. And it just never stops. And I kind of like that.
I do, but it is hard to explain it. Sometimes my wife will be like, where's your head at right now? And at this point, I'm just like, where do you think my head is?
I'm always growing.
Yeah, do you have a family help?
I recently got back from launching a land clearing business down in Austin. And this last winter, I launched a snow shoveling business alongside Bear Claw. And in both businesses, I've implemented Jobber as a way for us to efficiently manage quoting, job schedules, and invoicing, and even collecting online payment. Why? Because it's worked so well for us in Bear Claw and it's saved us a ton of time and headache. So if you are looking for a software that can help you manage the back end of your business, look no further than Jobber. You can visit go.getjobber.com/ownerops, OWNROPS.
I've got a fiance with a little dog, but I would say that is like one of the most under talked about things. I feel like in all these podcasts and different things I read on Twitter and stuff is like picking the right life partner for like your entrepreneurial journey is, I would say, like one of the top 3 things you have to go through. And like, I just learned so much through my different businesses of the different people I dated along the way and who wasn't probably like the right life partner for me as I was going through my entrepreneurial journey. Cause you have to have someone who's like super independent and like like very confident in themselves because you're just working constantly. And they have to be like your emotional champion in a way when no one else believes in you. I don't know. I just think it's interesting how these things happen.
It is super interesting, and I'm down to go down that route. Like, we just had our second kid. She's 4 weeks old as of yesterday, and
Congrats.
My wife is just crushing it as a mom. And I tell her every day, I'm like, everything that you're handling right now is amazing. And it truly is, because You know how it goes when you're building a company. Like your head never pulls out of it. Of course, I love those little girls and my wife to the ends of the earth and back. But from a work perspective, it's okay. We had a kid. Maternity, paternity, it's just non-existent now, right?
Can't just leave the business. Yeah.
Working in the hospital after like those hours that we got where it was down, like my laptop was there. I'm consistently just thinking about it. And I enjoy it and I love it that way, right? But it never stops.
No, it doesn't. And yeah, I feel there was some story I heard of Marissa Meyer when she took over Yahoo and she was about to have a baby, and then she had the baby, I think within a week. She had set up a crib in her office and was like bringing the baby in while she was running Yahoo basically. And it's just like in a place like Google or something, you would have been out for 9 months if you were working at a large company. And here was the CEO just, I'm going to bring the baby. I'm going to do both at the same time.
Yeah, I have a friend who worked for when it was Twitter. And he's I get 9 months off. I'm like, are you kidding me? That's
a
insane.
long time. I would go crazy after like a couple weeks.
But you have to quit your time in 9 months.
Right.
So anyways, yeah, it's either a blessing or a curse. I love it. I wouldn't have it any other way. Sounds like you're the same.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think, I don't think I'm like the person who's I want to retire by like a certain age. I think I'll just be perpetually working on something forever until I just can't, because I just like doing it.
Yeah. I'm curious to hear, like, after your first, let's take like your last exit before jumping into home services, did you take any prolonged time off? Or how long did it take you to jump back into the next project?
So I went to work so after I sold it, I went to work for another tech startup. So I probably took a month and a half off. And then I worked at that tech startup for, I think it was around 6 months. And then they did like massive layoffs basically. And within 5 days, I jumped into the S&B search looking for a business to buy. And I had been like part-time thinking about it and looking, but not seriously looking. I was like, maybe this is like a sign of destiny. A third of the company gets laid off. I'm one of them. I should just go full-time into searching for a business. And that's what I did. I don't know. I never really do these long, prolonged absences. I'm always like, okay, what's the next project? What's the next project? And I just get intellectually bored if I'm just like sitting around and not really doing anything, I would say.
Something you said early on, whenever we jumped on here, is every business in it is basically either the same or just similar. You have to just figure out how to build the teams, how to recruit, how to build the systems. Like, how do you think about building a business? Like when you come in, it's like, no matter what the industry, what are the building blocks?
I would say like the biggest thing is like, who are the right types of people for the stage of the company you're at? And like the biggest things I look for are people who have an inherent drive and like a motor. Like you can't teach motor to people, no matter how much you try. Either they're going to have this constant desire to succeed, or they're going to be just like checking boxes. That's one. I look for people who are really intellectually curious. Like I feel like a lot of building a business is failing, and you have to be really curious about like why you're failing. And if you're not, then you can struggle to troubleshoot through like how to grow a division or like how to grow a team with underneath you. And I think that's where, when I've mishired in the past, it's been people who are more cookie cutter, like plug and play type people. And then when they ran into obstacles, they couldn't really get around it. And then I would say like the biggest thing that I've learned from the previous companies is sequencing problems. Like I think when I was initially doing my first and second company, I would just try to tackle everything, like literally everything. And now I'm like, okay, this problem is the right problem for this year. And then this problem is going to be like the right one 6 months from now. And I don't like over tackle things, and that lead to a little bit more simplicity within the company. And it helps people drive towards goals faster, I think, versus just running around with the chicken with your head cut off, basically. It happens a lot when you're growing companies. Yeah, I don't know. I think the sequencing has definitely improved a lot over the iteration of the companies.
That's interesting. So would you say that you just have to be okay with some things are going to be going wrong while you're focusing on that one problem to solve?
Yeah, and I would say this is the biggest thing that I think corporate people kind of struggle with, if they haven't been like entrepreneurs a lot, is when you're at a corporation, you're trained to get something to 99% right when you're building it, because you want to look good internally to the other people that you're working with. When you're building a startup or building like a small business, you want to get to 85% right and then just move on to the next thing, because that difference between 85 and 99 takes a really long time to refine and perfect. And most of the time you just need to build out like a basic recruiting infrastructure. You need to build out like basic accounting. You need to build out like basic operational data. And then you eventually will bring in specialists who will refine it. But like otherwise you're going to be like nitpicking very tiny little things. And it's not very productive when you're actually trying to just become profitable and grow the company. And yeah, I think that's one of the things. I had that very kind of MVP type mindset, like similar to tech. Just get the thing out, just get it done. Like what do they always say? Perfection is the enemy of good. So I try to have that kind of mindset when I'm building things.
Did you buy Long Acre or did you start it?
I bought it. So it's very interesting. It's a 103-year-old company, which you don't run into a lot. I know. So it's run a long time and unintended, I guess. And but yeah, I mean, 3 generations of family owned it and they were ready to sell. The last generation, they've been around for 40 years, the 2 owners who have been running it. And they were brothers. I always wonder what it would have been like if I bought something a little smaller. It was 40 employees when I took it over. So it's kind of like moving a battleship at times versus just do true startup type stuff. There's some things that I think have been more challenging than others of dealing with a company of that size.
And what specifically have those things been?
I think culture change takes a lot longer because you have a lot more people involved. I also think just ripping apart systems, like you don't want to rip them apart so bad that it crumbles the whole company. So you have to be careful about, okay, which divisions am I going to focus on? So I almost pick like a division at a time that I'm going to unpack and then rebuild back up to what it needs to be versus just, I'm going to change everything all at once. It goes back to that sequencing thing that we talked about. And then I would also say just like even basic things like the pricing changes you have to do, resetting up your accounting in a way that kind of works, like setting up Service Titan was like a huge thing for us. And I feel like if I only had 3 or 4 people at the company, it would have been like much faster probably. But once you get it set up, it really hums like a machine because it's so large.
Which one did you do first?
Let's see. I would say about 3 months in, I set up Service Titan. So that was, and it probably took us about 6 months to really get to a good place with it. In terms of the divisions, I would say HVAC service is probably the one that I really started focusing on initially just because I knew it was going to be a major growth engine for the company. I left kitchen and bath and electric kind of alone for quite a while because they were already pretty large. So I started with some of the smaller divisions and started building those up from the ground up.
The last 2 companies you built, did you build from startup phase?
Yeah, they were built from scratch. So one was built while I was a teacher in my classroom. And it just started as like a project I was doing with my students. Then it spun out of that. And then I recruited all these other schools and then like school districts and stuff. And then the other one was like a pure tech startup that I was just building straight up from the ground up.
So what are the differences right now that you're seeing buying a company with 40 employees versus building a company from scratch from a personal perspective? Do you think that there's an archetype of an entrepreneur, like the 0 to 1 type and the 1 to 10 type?
Yeah, I do. I think that I would say the one common thing like across both of them is you have to be really good at distribution. And I think that was the biggest thing I learned initially was when you're initially building a company, you just obsess over the product a lot because you're like, I want this thing to be perfect. And you think about all these little things like how do people even click things on your website and all this other stuff. But as you get deeper into it, you're like, it really just comes down to sales. If you can sell things and you can market things, everything else will take care of itself. So I would say you're smiling because I think you realize this as you go through your own journey. Yeah. So half of my time now, maybe 3/4 of my time is on marketing and sales. And I would say with my first startup, it was like 20%. And that was me being my first startup and first business. But to answer your question, I think like it requires like more consensus building and like communication skills. I think the farther you get along and also being really good at picking managers as you get farther along. I think getting from 0 to 1, you just got to be really gritty and just have almost no social like qualms about just like literally doing whatever you got to do to get the company to 1. And that just takes a certain type of gritty person. But as you get further into it, you got to learn how to navigate and actually set up systems and structures.
I'm really interested in this because I was talking with my friend Nolan. He's been on the podcast. Nolan Gore, if you're listening. He's with a company called Top Choice Lawn Care down in Austin. And he and I, the first time we ever talked, he's like, I'm the 1 to 10 guy. I could never do the 0 to 1 phase. Whereas in my mind, I'm like, man, I love the 0 to 1 phase. I love just the messiness of it. I love it. And I think it's because I'm inherently a procrastinator. So having that pressure of this thing is breaking right now and I have to go fix it under this timeline, and having the adrenaline that comes along with, until I fix this, it's going to be broken. And that is affecting our company reputation. Like I love that. And I'm curious to hear if coming into this company, like you still have that level of adrenaline, like these things are breaking, or if it's more so just like hey, this is baseline. We're still servicing it at a certain level, but I just have to be okay with that while I focus on this problem. Can you just talk about if there are any differences there, or if they're actually similar, just on a bigger scale?
I would say it's like you almost have to develop this muscle to tell yourself no, to not, like, I'll give you examples. So like the past couple of weeks, I've been like hyper focused on like our booking rate when people call in. And it even got to the point of me like going through every single call and like thinking through, okay, what are the different like levers that are unblocking things to get us to a higher booking rate? And then as I got deeper into it, I almost had to say, stop. Like, I need to now just delegate this out. Like, I need to not obsess over getting from 82 to 85. And I need to focus on a higher level system that I need to build. Like, at the end of the day, moving from like 82 to 85 can be a more gradual thing. Like, it doesn't have to literally happen right now. Like, me figuring out how we're going to get 4 new vehicles in the next month because enterprise is being difficult is much more important than that particular problem. So I feel like I'm constantly having to just think through for the next week, okay, what problems are actually really most important? And what am I like uniquely qualified to do that like other people can't do within the company? So I think versus like with my first company, I just would have kept literally beating my head against the wall until I got it to 85. And it would have been fine, but like then I wouldn't have focused on probably what was as important. And I think those things change as you get larger. You just have more problems you have to reprioritize and think about because there's just more people and more systems and more divisions.
Do you follow your gut and just take action, or do you have a process? Like when you're saying it's 10:30 at night sometimes and your brain's just going, do you have these aha moments where you're like, this is what I need to work on, this is what I'm doing, and jump straight into it? Or do you have a methodical process of, here's my Sunday, I'm planning out what the big problems are this week, listing them out?
It's more methodical. So like the biggest thing I learned in tech that's helped me is I do like sprint planning. So what I do is I use Notion, and like whenever I have anything I have to do, I have a big backlog of tasks. So I'll put it in like the backlog, and then the beginning of each week, I plot out like, this is how many hours I have in the week that I'm going to work. And then I basically take stuff from the backlog, and they have like hours per task basically. And I'm just like putting them into a sprint for a week. And then at the end of every day, I'm basically pulling out, okay, from that sprint, what I want to work on that day. And what I'll intentionally do to get to your question is I'll literally say, here are my top 2 focus areas. I want that to take 70% of my time. And then I'm literally going to pick the administrative stuff that like is going to make up that other 30%. If it doesn't make the cut, then I'm not going to work on it this week. And it's almost forcing me to only work on a certain amount of things versus just right now I've got 230 things in my backlog. There's no way I'm going to do all 230 things right now, but I could obsessively go after every little thing, but it's just not a good use of my time as a business owner.
Is that your personality? Have you always been that way? Or is that learned?
The sprint planning or which part of it?
So this is going down on a rabbit hole, and I'm always curious to hear how other entrepreneurs are just inherently wired versus, is this a skill that you need to learn? Because I'll give you an example. The way I'm wired is I've noticed that I perform best when I just follow the energy, right? If I get the energy and I think that's something that I need to go tackle, as long as I go tackle it while I have the energy and it's there, it's going to get done. But if I like think through and try to backlog and go sit down and plan it all out, it just kills it for me.
Interesting.
Whereas for you, what you're saying is, okay, you're very methodical about it. And I'm curious, are there certain things that are just inherent to your personality that you have to lean into and pour gas on that fire? Or as an entrepreneur, do you need to go sharpen your sword on your weaknesses? Because I'm telling you right there, if you made me do that, like,
it wouldn't happen.
No. And I would have to consciously think about, okay, this is a weakness of mine. I need to get put in the reps to get better. So my question for you is specifically, is that just naturally how you're wired? Or was it something where you were building the last 2 companies where you're like, I just need to get better at this, and I need to put a system in place for myself to have a backlog of tasks, and then take it in a very methodical manner. Is the
That's
question?
what you're saying. Yeah. So like, I would say the things that are very inherent to me are like, I guess, like I can't fail things. Like I just won't let myself fail at it. So I have very much a mindset of whatever I got to do to get there. I never have to convince myself to work. It's like I always just, every job I've ever worked at, I'm working 70, 80 hours a week. I don't know why. That's what I want to do. And so I've never really had to inspire myself to work more. I would say like the things that I've had to teach myself a lot is like people management. That doesn't come very naturally to me. Like I'm very direct and blunt typically. And sometimes I've had to think about like, how do I get someone to like self-reflect when I'm about to give them like criticism? Like, how do I like coach someone around like they're struggling with this skill versus me just telling them directly what to do? Like, how do I coach them in a way that'll resonate with them? I think other things like culture with the company, I have to be very intentional about setting up time to think about that, because I just focus on like function and like technical and what do we need to do. And sometimes I realize like people like doing other things besides those things. And like team meetings have a purpose beyond just being like highly functional. So like I have to build processes, and I learned that through like burning people out at previous companies or just the way I manage people and maybe not jiving with them. So I would say like there are different things I picked up from working at other places that I think have made me like a stronger leader and stuff. But I don't know, one of the things I always think about is like when I'm using my time, like what can I uniquely do that is like 20% better than anybody else at the company? And if it's not, then I need to be delegating it out. You know, it's like a good example right now is recruiting. Like I can do it significantly faster and I can choose people better. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so heavily involved in it, because I think it makes such an impact on everyone else in the company because of who I pick. And I've always heard stories of places like DoorDash where I think like the CEO was interviewing people until they got to 1,000 employees. Same thing with Stripe. And you're like, wow, that's a lot of people to be involved with, that they cared that much about the people that they brought into the company. And they wanted to have that much of a thumb on it to actually influence the quality of the people that were at the company.
So can we dive down deep in? Like, why are you so confident that you are 20% better? Because I'm in agreement with you. It's like, I consistently try to think about that. What value can I bring to this company, and what can somebody else do just as good, if not better than me?
So I think the recruiting thing is a weird, unique thing, because my first job in college was I was a recruiter for Teach for America for 4 years. So I had to convince these college students who want to go into finance and like consulting to go be public school teachers. And most of them did not want to do it. And I had to get really creative with how I talk to people and understand people and empathize with people and source people. And sourcing was probably the biggest thing that I had to learn, is like, how do you find people? How do you find out information about them? How do you reach out to them in a compelling way? And then I would end up working in like recruiting analytics at Google for a bit. So I had to analyze like how they found software engineers. So it's almost like I had all these life experiences that led up till now. When I delegate it out to someone to hire, it might take them a couple weeks. But if I really need someone, I can flip a switch. And I hired an electrician within 48 hours once. And I was like, I'm going to literally go on Indeed. I'm going to source. I'm going to reach out to 25 people knowing like 6 are going to reply. And then I'm going to interview them. And then I'm going to get someone hired. And it's almost like that basketball switch in like the fourth quarter when you got to turn it on. I don't know any other way to explain it. I know when I need to do something, like I can flip it with recruiting. And I'm trying to figure out over time, how do I teach people? Also, the selection process, that's something where you just have to have a lot of reps of interviewing people to see when people are like BSing you, basically, and when they're not what they say they are, and how do you ask the right questions to figure out like how curious they are. If you ask someone how intellectually curious are, they're going to just tell you what you want to hear. So you almost have to ask them certain types of questions to get them to really truly be honest with you. Then you can assess them compared to other people.
Can you take us through from the start, your process, and how, whenever you're in fourth quarter game mode?
Yeah, sure. So what I do is for every role I have, I've always got like you always got to have a job description and like the key traits you're looking for. And then what I do for home services is I go on Indeed, I use their smart sourcing, and I'll go in and I'll look literally for people within 25 miles of us that have been active within the past 6 months. And then I create different templates for each job description. And the key to getting people to respond is you got to have a really kind of sexy first sentence. It's got to be something like, I'll give you an example. Like one of the things I did in my first year was I picked the biggest private equity company in our area. And I said, we are the anti-private equity company. And people would always reply, oh, this is interesting. What do you mean? It would start a conversation because they get like tons of Indeed messages every day. So it's like, how do you stick out and actually have a conversation with people? So I would do that. And then the other thing I would do is I just got really creative on how to get in contact with people. I would, if I found someone's name on Indeed, I would look them up on Facebook and I would message them. I'd find them on LinkedIn. I would find them on Twitter if I could. Most of the time they weren't. I would ask around if they knew anybody. So once they actually replied, it was like I would text them, call them, and email them because I had all three of those things, and I would do it probably within an hour. And then I would try to get on the phone, do like a 15-minute phone interview, and then set up like an hour-long in-person interview where they actually come in. I get to meet them, get to know them, see if they're a fit.
What are some of those KPIs, or the metrics that you mentioned? You said you just lightly threw around, reach out to 25, 6 are going to reply. Do you have those metrics dialed in?
I wouldn't say it's like super well defined. It's more in my head, but generally I know like when I reach out to people like at scale, like maybe 15 to 20% will reply. And of those, maybe like half will actually be qualified, maybe a fourth, depending on the role. So you got to think, okay, if I need to hire a couple people, you have to backwards math it a little bit. And then the other thing I think a lot about is like, how much does compensation play into the role? How much of it is like about their values? Like how much of it is about growing into something? I would say the number one hiring mistake I've made in the past is hiring really qualified people that I really liked, but that were not the right time, right role. Like they were either too early for that role or way too late for that role. And they weren't that right person at that right time. I'll give you an example. Like my first HVAC service manager that I hired would have been perfect now, like 2 years from now. But at the time, I needed him to be a little bit more okay with system building, a little bit more okay with things just being really messy, really good at the people management side and the culture building side to get people from a paper-based system to Service Titan. Now we're fully live on it. We're operational for 2 years. Like I need someone who can coach to the data, coach to actually like each individual invoice, like actually build that out. And he would have been perfect at this particular time. But because I liked him and his experience and everything, I brought him on, and it was something he struggled with in this first 6 months. And I think that's something that you learn as you get more reps at it, is like, how do I bring in the person who can grow with the role at that time?
How the heck do you figure that out?
You mess up a lot. And then there's no way to be perfect at it initially. And I feel like as you get more into it, you really think through, what is this person particularly trying to achieve in their career? And does that align with like where I'm headed? And one of the things I talk a lot about my general manager is every person who joins the company has like a central why, and they won't always even know what it is, but it's one of three things typically. It's they want to make a lot more money, they want a lot more work-life balance, or they want to get to a certain job title or a certain position, basically. And then sometimes you have people who just are really passionate about a particular craft and they just want to get really good at that craft. And what the key to like finding the right person is like, how do you make sure that you are coaching and building a system for them to get to their why? So if you bring in someone and they're like capped on what they can make and all they care about is making more money, it's not going to work probably between the two of you. And you have to identify that right off the get-go. Same thing with the work-life balance. If someone really just wants a lot more work-life balance and wants to get out of the field so they're not on call all the time, but then they get in and they're like leaving every day at 3:30 or 3 and they're not really checking their email after that, they're not going to be probably the right person for the role if they're in like a service manager role where they got to be reactive constantly. So you got to think through what is driving them towards this decision making and like, how do I build the right systems? And is it the right time for that type of person?
How do you identify that in your interview process?
Sometimes I just try to ask them straight up and I'm like, here are the 4 most important things. What do you truly care about? And most of the time they won't say money. And then you have to really push them. And you got to ask things like, I always ask people, let's walk through your past 3 jobs. Why did you join it? Why did you leave it? And as you talk to them about it, you'll start noticing some patterns. Sometimes they're not patient. They're constantly trying to get to the next thing. They always think the grass is greener. And you might notice, okay, this person is just like perpetually ambitious. Or you might notice, hey, this person is not maybe good at communicating with people, or they're overly opinionated as they're going through it. And it's almost like you can identify why they make the decisions that they do and how rational they are sometimes, especially as you deal with colored people and how they think through things. But I would say that question. And then also like, why did you get into this particular trade in the first place? Or why did you get into this career? And you can understand, was it just happenstance? Was it something they were truly passionate about? I got a plumber. When I asked him that, he like started describing how when he built his first treehouse when he was like 11 or 10, he was trying to build the plumbing for it. And then he started like fixing cars, like vintage cars. And then his email was like vintage plumber. And as I started talking to this guy more, I was like, this guy just loves plumbing. He is super passionate about plumbing. He just wants to plumb all day long. And I could tell like that type of guy is going to be like, I want to teach myself tankless water heaters. I want to teach myself water softeners. I want to teach myself this additional thing versus maybe some guy who just comes in as I was at this place for a year and a half. They didn't really value me well enough. And like, I didn't get that much of a pay raise at this thing. And I know in my head, this guy within a year is going to be like constantly wanting more and more, which is fine depending on the role, but you just have to understand what drives people and if you're the right place for that person.
Okay. So talk me through those two examples that you just gave. Like, how do you, because your head, when you're interviewing those two different people, is probably strategizing where they could potentially fit inside the business, correct?
Correct. I think it depends on the size of the division. So like, for example, you want someone who's more gritty and can adapt like disorganization when you're like only a couple people in the division. And I think as you get larger, you want to bring in more specialized types of people that maybe are like, the example would be like right now we have probably 5 guys in our HVAC service division. I brought in a guy who's just really good at refrigeration. And that's all he does is refrigeration versus maybe if my first or second hire would be someone who could do a lot of things like 80% well, but not one thing like close to 100%. That was like the types of customers we were dealing with. But as you get bigger, you have to also think through, if I want to go after more specialized refrigeration jobs, like I need a guy who can specifically do something like that. But that type of guy might have a very different mentality about work than the guy who's gritty and willing to roll up his sleeves, but could become more of a bull in a china shop sometimes. But he may not always be great at perfecting things, but he'll get the job done.
Yeah, I remember I had John Wilson on with the Wilson companies last year, and something that when I went back and listened to that interview that stuck with me that he said was, your role as an entrepreneur, one, it's ever evolving, like you're continually reshaping yourself and who you are.
And firing yourself, basically.
And then the second thing he said that stuck with me was, your job is just to take generalists, turn them into specialists, or keep the generalists in the generalist phase or whatever division is generalist, and then go find the specialist to specialize in the specific things. And so I've just consistently thought about that.
Yeah, and I think it's also like, when's the right time to bring in the specialist is hard. Like sometimes I brought in specialists too early, like I talked about earlier. And then sometimes like I felt like I waited too long. I guess it depends on the division and the problem, but sometimes it's hard to sequence when to do that and when not to do that. And how do you balance overhead with those decisions?
And that's where the art comes in of business building. There's really no exact science. Like you have to have the internal pulse on that.
Yeah. I would say one of the things I think a lot about is like, when do I focus on operational things versus like revenue producing things with the company? And I always lean more on the revenue producing side, and I'll figure out the operational side as I go. But getting back to that kind of unique 20% thing, like one of the things I'm working through with my general manager right now is we know we need to get our average job ticket size up with our technicians. And he has this 10-year career of like training and coaching and like working with technicians. And right now he splits a lot of the administrative stuff with us. So one of the things I'm thinking about this next quarter is maybe I'm going to take 80% of his administrative burden onto me so that he can literally do 4 ride-alongs a week and do more group sessions and do more coaching with the techs. And like at the end of the day, could I delegate all that stuff out and hire more people so that I have more time? Yes, I could. But is that the right thing at this right point in the company? If I'm an administrative sponge and I can just do everything super fast and efficiently, but that frees him up to go do the thing that I can't do as well as he does, is that the right thing for the company? And that's where my head is probably leaning, is if he can do the ride-alongs and do the group sessions and do that stuff, he's much better at than I am. Like that will propel our company more forward than him doing like payroll, basically. And sometimes you have to, I feel like a lot of first-time entrepreneurs, you have this ego about, I want to do the sexy things in the company. It's, no, that's not really what you need to be doing as like the leader. You need to often do the most boring and unsexy things so that the people that you're hiring that are really good at specific things can focus on them. So you need to just soak it up constantly and unblock them so they can really focus on what they're supposed to versus like the bullcrap stuff.
Interesting you bring that up. I'm curious though to hear your perspective on why don't you hire and delegate that administrative stuff?
So part of it is like more accounting and just like EBITDA and just thinking through, is this the right time for me to spend money on this particular thing that is like non-revenue producing? You know, like things get more automated. It's easier just to automate it, not even have to really bring on additional overhead. But I don't know, one of the things I think a lot about when I'm like outsourcing versus delegating things is like, should this be an internal function or like an external function? So a good example is like when you're building out your accounting infrastructure, one of the things you eventually reach in the company is you need like an internal bookkeeper. Like you need someone who can do time cards, you need someone who can do checks, you need someone who can process the payments, deal with the credit cards. But then at a certain point, you're like, okay, now like I need actually like to have a CPA firm involved in order to prepare my financial statements. But like how involved do they really need to be? Like how much money do I need to be really outsourcing? Like I could outsource everything I do in my accounting to that CPA firm, but I would spend a lot more money doing it. So it's like, what point do you use them versus not? And I feel like as I get deeper into company building, I just get a lot of reps at this is when I need to use a lawyer. This is when I need to use an accountant. This is when I need to use like a marketing agency. And then when should it be internal versus external? I would say marketing is the thing that I should have delegated more out. And I try to do a lot of it in-house. And that has been somewhat challenging. And I think in retrospect, I probably would have spent more time finding the right agencies in the past year and a half if I could go back at it.
Have you been handling some of that yourself?
Yes, I do like local service ads. I do the Google reviews in terms of applying to them and stuff. I would say about a year and a half ago, I brought in someone to build out a website for us, and I've used them repeatedly now. Same thing with like Google pay-per-click ads, like outsourcing that part. Mailers, I outsource. It's like we don't even have a full-time marketing hire internally, but I've always had in my mind, build out a marketing department when you hit 10 million in revenue, basically in my industry. But I know some people do it a lot sooner than that. So I don't know. One of the things I struggle with marketing is it's very specialized. Like you're either really good at PPC or you're really good at websites, or you're really good at like social media. And, you know, as like an owner, it's like you're doing 8 things at once all the time for marketing. So if you bring in someone who's in-house, they're not really good at the 7 other things. They're really good at one thing. So it's hard to justify the salary typically because you're like, I need you to be good at 8 things and you're really probably not going to be good at 8 things. And you're going to perpetually feel like you're failing and putting a lot of pressure because we got to grow. So that's where I try to do those things at 80%. And then I'll bring in like experts to get us closer to the 100. But I guess there's different ways to approach it. That's just the way I've done it.
How did you do it at your other companies?
Tech is different because I was doing like B2B. So, I mean, everything in home services, like I'm mostly residential. I do a little bit of light commercial, but building like an enterprise sales cycle is just a whole different ballgame. And like figuring out, okay, these are the 100 customers that I could sell to. Let me figure out like how I'm going to sell them over like a 6 to 12 month period. How do I build the right product? How do I do the right pilots with them? And I learned that through just working at startups that were like B2B. And then I like adapted those practices. But it's definitely interesting, just even in home services, just thinking through how different we deal with like commercial customers versus like residential. Like it's so relational. It's very much like you take the guy out to lunch, like you get to know them, you get to continue building the relationship. They'll continue using you because they just like you basically, and they like dealing with you. Versus like on the residential side, it's like very operational and marketing. If you lose 5 customers out of 2,000, it doesn't make a huge difference. But if you lose 5 out of 20 commercial customers, like it can make a pretty big difference in your company. So it's just, you have to be much more intentional about who are the types of managers I bring in, what relationships do they already have, versus are they just really good operationally at running this division and reacting to things constantly.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad you brought that up as well. That is something I've been thinking through.
Residential or commercial too?
Yeah, we have both. Like I view our residential funnel just completely different than our B2B commercial funnel. And exactly what you just said. There's a small pool of contractors and developers here, and you burn one bridge there and you can lose a quarter of your pipeline. If you have 4 main GCs or developers, right, and you lose one of those relationships, it could be 25% of your commercial pipeline. But then I look at the B2C completely different, which is where I love spending as the owner. Like I get really excited about marketing funnels and building B2C targeted advertising and then take the customer through the sales funnel. Whereas the other side is exactly what you just mentioned. It's like an enterprise sales function. Like how do you put the right person in the right seat to go develop long-term relationships with the B2B clients? So we have two functions of our business, but
Do you
I like
think
living.
that's, like, go back to what you said earlier? Do you think that's like the delayed gratification, procrastination thing you talked about with your personality, like where you have to have this constant, like immediate thing to go after? And with like B2B, you could be going after someone for 9 months. And it's like you might have to wait a month to make your next move in terms of the relationship. Is that what's been hard as you've been thinking through your business, is like, how do I do these super long-term strategic plays versus B2C? It's like funnel every week you're examining, and it's this constant urgency to improve and iterate. Is that where it's been difficult as like a business leader to think about?
I've already made the decision. Like I have a great sales leader in place and he handles all our B2B relationships. But in the beginning, like to answer your question, I love living in the B2C funnel, right? I love thinking about how are we going to go drive traffic to a specific landing page or an offer, capture that, take them through a really buttoned up sales process. And this is where I felt like whenever I went back into like local services, that the opportunity was. Because if you go to a tech company or take a marketing agency, for example, and if you were reaching out to a marketing agency in an inbound funnel and you don't get a call from a salesperson, you're probably just going to the next 3 to 10 people.
Yep.
But that company who calls you immediately, you're going to immediately have some sort of perception about them. And I think home services is the exact same. We can build a sales funnel or a marketing and sales system that's really buttoned up and polished, then we have a leg up over the competitors in our industry. And so that's what I get really excited about. I love building the relationships as well. Just to your point where it's, how do you think about putting yourself in the area that you have specific expertise and knowledge in, and then delegate the other areas to people who can do the other things as good or better than you. And it just so happens that the guy we have in place not only does it as good, he does it way better than me because he's
Means you
super
hired
patient
well.
with people. He does all the trap shoots, like the golf tournaments and trap shooting and all that good stuff. And so he's really good at that. Whereas I just want to be dialed, like looking at our different metrics and, okay, this ad is working, it's hitting really well. How do we go create another variation and replicate that in another market, right? Those are the things that just excite me.
It's much more data centric, I would say, like B2C. Like I feel like a B2B, it's kind of like, you could do it. You're like, this is the amount of customers we reached out to. This is the amount that we're trying to cultivate. But it's not like you can get into the weeds with like clicks and like time spent on page and like conversion rates and then like average response time. Like it's just, I reached out to that guy this week and he responded and he either liked us or didn't. I don't know. It's not as complicated as I think B2C is, or intellectually stimulating in some ways.
Yeah. So how have you thought about it from your perspective? Which side do you like better?
I like B2C better now that I've gone deeper into it with this company. I think the whole Google reviews and like getting Thumbtack and Angie's reviews is like fascinating. Like how do you incentivize your guys correctly out in the field? Like how do you build the right like review automations? For a long time initially, like I was like at the end of every day, I would go through like our invoices and Service Titan. It would take 10 minutes a day and I would just copy and paste their email, personalize it and send out like, hey, you could help our small business with a quick review. Coming from my email got like a much higher hit rate than when I do the like review automation, which was interesting because it would just come from like a marketing at Long Acre or something email. And they'd go, oh, okay, here's another review email. And I've gotten like 15 of these in a day versus me like personally sending it out. So I don't know, that was one of the things that just understanding like the psychology of like why people leave reviews and how do they leave reviews is pretty interesting. And then things like Thumbtack and Angie's, I tried it the first year, complete failure. We like turned it off. And then this past winter, I mean, we got it up to, I don't know, we were doing like 3x ROI on the spend versus immediate value that we were getting on it. And we were booking almost like half of our jobs through Thumbtack and Angie's at one point, which was great. And I think it was just really, I feel like entrepreneurship is like taking an onion and you're just unpeeling it constantly. And you're like, I think I got to the core. And then you realize, actually, there's 8 more layers to this. So like with Thumbtack, we realized only specific job types in our area would convert at a high enough level. So we turned off a lot of them. And then we realized like if we only do it at certain times of day, it's much more effective. And then there was like additional layers that we kept peeling and peeling to figure out like, how do we really make this specific marketing channel work? And like, why will it work for us? And at what spend level will it work for us? And I don't know, I find that stuff, like you said, like I could just spend like all day on it if I wanted to. It's fascinating to me.
It's probably a really good word for me to listen to from you. Like something you said early on was push really hard to get it to 85% and just know that last 85 to 100% is going to come. The way I heard you say it is, as the entrepreneur, you likely need to hire someone else who can come in and take over it at 85%. And just know that the 85 to 100% is going to come with time and rep. And if you're the entrepreneur, once you get it to 85%, like you can add so much more value to the company by taking whatever's at 50 and getting that quicker to 85. And so I think it's a really good word for me to listen to, because like right now I'm absolutely obsessed with our B2C funnel, like obsessed, and likely letting areas even just recruiting just fall. When in all reality, like I should actually go build a system for recruiting. Cause right now it's just, oh, we need somebody. Okay, sweet. Fourth quarter. Let's go play ball.
Go. And I think one of the things I think a lot about is like, when should you bring in that specialist? So I'll give you a good example. So like right now, I would say the way we do payables, it's probably like 85% good. Like I've got a system, like everyone uploads receipts and like purchase orders. We match them. We do payables once a week. We use bill.com. We send them out. I know I could have a much more automated system and we could get from 85 to 100, and it might save us an hour and a half a week when we do payables. Our team spends maybe 3 to 4 hours to send out the payables at the end of the week. But when I think about what is the cost of doing something like that, comparative to figuring out like, how do we get our HVAC service division from 80K peak month to 120K peak month? And what goes into that? Should I put us into Nextstar, some other training program? Like, how do I make the right investments into something like that? It's learning and teaching myself this thing is important, but not right now. I can get by with where it's at. And when it eventually becomes such a burning on my head problem, that's when I need to actually go out and fix it in the rest of the company from literally doing what it needs to do. Vehicles is a good example. Like, I feel like I'm not passionate about vehicles at all. Like when I listen to some people, they're like, oh, I've got like Mavericks and I got this whole like system set up. And I'm like, I want to spend as little time and as little money as I can on this. And I want to make sure my guys can always stay out in the field and do what they need to do. But I'm not going to get passionate about leasing structures of enterprise. That is not my thing. And let's get it to the bare minimum we need to do so that I can focus on the other stuff that's really important.
Striker Digital specializes in SEO services specifically for local service businesses. Bodie and Andy, the two co-founders, have helped me get Bear Claw Land Services to the #1 search result on Google inside my state for my specific search term. If you want to learn more, visit strikerdigital.com. That's STRYKER-digital.com.
Something I do want to ask you about before we wrap up is, as I was going through your website, you've got different service divisions. Something I've been thinking about a lot, especially as it relates to your marketing strategy. Do you have to look at each different division as a business of its own and a marketing strategy of its own? Or do you think about creating a funnel that gets people in on the front end and then creating an upsell process along the way, or a cross-sell process?
So it's more specialized by division. I would say it's 75% specialized by division and then 25% upselling. So I'll give you a good example. So like with Google and like GBP profiles and Google local service ads, one of the things I've figured as I've gone through 2 years of this is you can really only advertise 2 services, high-level services, really well. When you get to 3 and 4, Google just does not prioritize them. Good examples, like when I initially took over the company, electric was our main category. And I was like, there's just not enough electrical work, so I'm going to make it plumbing, and then I'm going to focus on HVAC. And now 80% of my leads on Google are like plumbing and HVAC. And electrical is getting a lot less than it used to. And I have to build out a very specific strategy for electrical because I know it's never going to get the same attention. Same thing with kitchen and bath remodeling. That's completely, it's like a want versus like a need. So I have to think completely differently. Like I have a whole separate website. I have a whole separate GBP profile for it. I do my mailers differently. Like I have a whole different customer persona that I'm going after with it. But to the upselling and the cross-selling, I think some divisions and some services are very natural with one another, like plumbing and kitchen and bath. They're working in the bathroom. They see something, they talk to the customer very naturally. They're like, oh yeah, I want to redo my floor in here. I want to redo the tile backsplash. And then it like naturally feeds into them referring it versus like HVAC and kitchen and bath. I don't know. Someone's out there and they just want AC to work. And you're like, oh, do you want like a kitchen and bath too? And like sometimes it comes up organically, but not as often. So it's harder for them to upsell stuff like that. But yeah, I often think of it more as like, how do you build out the specific funnels? And then the thing I've been focused on the last 6 months a lot is how do I really retarget my customer base a lot with those additional services and really squeeze out every last bit of juice with them in terms of the interactions we have, the maintenances we have, doing those free plumbing inspections, just how many touch points can we have with someone in a year? You build relationships with people.
Yes. And I truly believe that's where a ton of untapped potential lies, especially if you're a local service business doing any sort of ads. If you're getting Google Business Profile views, you're capturing them on the front end. Sure, you go provide a service, but I do just see so much opportunity that if you create and track a database and tag them properly with the services that are provided, there's so much untapped opportunity, especially if you offer multiple services, to go create targeted email campaigns. For example, this is what I've been nerding out recently.
No, go for it.
So if Hardy were to get people in on his funnel with plumbing, and then even a year later, with the right nurture sequences on HVAC or on electrical, could turn that customer that's already in his database into another paying customer again and increase the lifetime value without having to go spend dollars on the front end to acquire them into the database. And I think this is where a lot of opportunity is in home services right now.
And I would say like the two things to extrapolate on this, that if I'm thinking back about the past couple of years of marketing, like the two things that I think I made the biggest mistakes on, or things that I learned the most from, were your location matters a lot more than you realize. Like I was like, oh, I can outmarket this problem. And we're in a very rural area and there's 1,000 people in the town. And then the nearest fast food's 15 minutes away. And what I've realized now in retrospect is like the 10-mile radius around your business is incredibly influential. Like you could literally have everything wrong, but if you pick the exact right location for your business and you get the basics right with Google reviews, like you will do very well. And it's almost like we're pushing this boulder up the hill constantly with something like that. And then the second thing I've thought a lot about is like, initially when you start a business, you're like afraid of annoying people. And you're like, oh, I said this thing, they must have gotten it. And as I get deeper into building businesses, I'm like, it takes people hearing something like 3 or 4 times for them to actually even really understand it. If you're changing your pricing and you said it once, I guarantee you 99% of people did not even look at the email. And that's why like when I'm doing my email newsletters or I'm doing my Facebook post, I'm bringing up stuff once every 2 months and I'm like rehashing it and I'm reiterating it. And I'm not afraid anymore about just annoying people, because like most of the time people, 99.9% of their lives, they're not thinking about your business. Literally only thinking about it when they interact with you.
Yeah. They're not thinking about their business. They're not thinking about you. They're not thinking about what cool equipment you have, that cool wrap that you put on your equipment. Nobody sees it. Nobody cares unless they see it like 7 to 10 times. Like it may stick in their mind, but yeah, I'm so glad. And I'm going to go on a little rabbit hole here, but people are so distracted these days. They are just scrolling like crazy. So if you're doing any sort of social media marketing, and like a lot of people have asked, how did you get over the fear of being on camera? Because we run a lot of Facebook ads where I'm just like, hey, it's Bear Call Land Services. If you want to get your force cleaned up, click the link below. And it's like, in the beginning, I'm like, man, this kind of feels a little cringe. Like, but at the end of the day, I'm like, nobody actually really cares. Nobody does. And you know what? Whenever they see it 3 or 4 times, then it remembers. They're like, oh, hey, it's funny. Like you walk around town, people are like, I think I saw your ad, right? And I know that they've seen it like 18 times at this point, but in their head, they're like, I think I saw your ad, right? Because it takes so many times for people to see something for it to actually stick, especially in this day and age with attention spans. So Just because you send out this is a soapbox rabbit hole, but just because you send out one email or do one Facebook post about some offer that you have, most, like Hardy's, just 99% of people don't ever see it, and they definitely don't remember it. So it's got to be this consistent. If we actually really want to sell a service in this local area, we have to be showing up consistently with something that is adding value to these people.
Do you go after like specific zip codes? I can
yeah.
tell you kind of my process of how I like analyze it. They'll talk me through, how do you think about like areas of expansion versus, do you just pick really dense areas and you're just like, we're going to go after 4 and we're going to get to a certain % market share and then we're going to move on to the next ones? Like, how do you think about shotgunning versus density?
I'm actually in this right now. I had to just shut off my ads because of our lead flow. And so our business is unique because we're in a mountain town. We're surrounded by mountains. We have to go up and over a pass if we want to get to another service area 2 hours away. So not only do we have to do that, we've got about $500,000 of equipment in our main service. So if I want to replicate this thing, I've got to invest in equipment, another crew, another recruiting strategy, build another sales project manager, right? Which is totally fine and doable. But the way I think about it is I look at it more from a perspective of, here's my crew, here's the main service we do. I want to have equipment fully paid off before I go replicate again, because one, that's doing 2 things. One, it's decreasing debt. And then 2, it's validating that we have something that is repeatable. And then it's going to take a lot of effort and energy and time and capital to go replicate that elsewhere. So I focus a very specific zip code, and I only target our service area that is easily accessible with our crew and equipment. And purely from geographical constraints, right? Like, we're not going to haul 3 pieces of heavy equipment up and over a mountain pass 2 hours each day to go do jobs in another service area. We're just going to do as many as we can here and then go build another crew. Does that answer your question?
It does. It's interesting. Like, I kind of approach it somewhat similar. I like, one of the things I do is, so I pulled like every zip code within our service area. I think it was like 80 zip codes because we have our service area. And basically what I looked at was like, how many customers do we currently have in a zip code? Then I looked at a couple key kind of like things. I looked at how many people have bought homes in that zip code in the past 12 months. What is the median home value in those zip codes? I looked at like average income level. And then I looked at renters versus like owner occupied. And what's interesting is like with kitchen and bath, it makes a massive difference, because the odds of someone doing a $50,000 or $75,000 remodel is like very different if their median home value is $750,000 versus like around our location, it's like $250,000. So like I am almost going after these zip codes that are 45 minutes away because I know that's where the density of the marketing will work. But then on other things, I think about what are the age of the homes, like with plumbing, HVAC. Like if there was a huge home expansion during the 90s or 2000s, I know all those HVAC systems are about to go out of business or not work anymore, basically. So then I'm like targeting my marketing towards that. So I would say one of the things I kind of wish we were smaller at times is because of our size and the amount of jobs I have to produce. It almost is kind of like what you said earlier, where I want to go after 15 things at once and I have to focus myself into a couple of areas, because I could just spend unlimited marketing dollars if I don't focus myself into certain geographies.
I'm with you. And we offer multiple services as well. The reason we built the dirt crew was because it's like a natural upsell to our clearing side of the business, our forestry side of the business. But what you're doing is impressive. I mean,
thank you. Appreciate it.
You feel like running 4 different local service businesses all in one. And they all have, to your point, they all have a different marketing budget and a different strategy. Like, I feel like my mind is overwhelmed with just targeting the specific area, thinking through what are the pains of these homeowners in this zip code. Because that's all it is. You're just solving their problems. To your point, identifying strategically what homes are at that age of that HVAC system likely going out, hitting them with direct mailers. We're doing the same thing or a similar thing here, right? It's like the problem is that homes have a bunch of dead wood lying on the ground from beetles that came through our forest, killed trees in the early 2000s. Now they're all laying on the ground. They need cleaned up. And so it's just like strategically thinking about people's problems in the zip code. But the fact that you're doing it with 4 different services in different target areas is mind-blowing.
I did some better than others. The crazy thing is when I took over the business, they were doing like almost half and half commercial residential with all 4. So it was almost like you had 8. And I was like, we got to get out of like new construction, heavy commercial, because like we can't do that really well and residential really well. Like we're stagnating. And that was the biggest shift I did with the companies. Like our electrical was almost all new construction, and like we've lost a lot of revenue in it. And I made that a very intentional decision because I was like, I can't spend half my time meeting with general contractors, but also spend half my time like focusing on marketing. Like I got to be really good at one thing, you know? And I feel like sometimes what happens in a lot of businesses when you're in that 1 to 5 million stage is you get these sexy things coming your way. You're like, I could do that. Like we got the guys to do that. And then you look up like a year later and you're like, we're doing like 8 things now. And like, we're only good at 2, but like we're making kind of money at it, but then you can't really get good at all 8. And then you end up plateauing because you can't get anything like larger. So I've been very intentional being like, we're not going to do this thing. We're just going to say no, or we're going to shrink this thing down because like we got to get really good at the core things that we're trying to do with the company.
Well, a new construction throws so many curveballs because you're in front and you're behind another subcontractor,
right?
And you're at the mercy of their schedule. And then you're in front of somebody else who has already been promised a time slot on the schedule. So if you really want to build the great relationships with the GCs, you have to be at the mercy of their schedule to a certain extent. And that throws an operational, not 1, but like 18 operational curveballs at any given time.
And it's hard when you're in the moment because like new construction's a lot of revenue. Like I would get like $300,000 checks or $250,000 checks, and it was great because then I could spend them on vehicles and I could spend on this other stuff. But when I looked at it in a larger perspective, I was like, how do I grow this company at 20% gross profit in new construction when I'm waiting 4 months to get paid by general contractor? And if I even bring up getting paid, they get pissed off basically, versus resi where it's like a much higher profit margin, faster cash flow conversion cycles. It takes longer to build it out, but it's going to be more durable and sustainable for the company. So that gets back to that sequence thing I talked about earlier. Like I didn't rip off the Band-Aid right off the bat. Hey, I had to think about when did I get my resi up to a certain place to be able to make enough revenue to deal with the loss in the new construction.
Yeah. And you could probably coach me up on this right now. So our project manager was out this last week. So I filled kind of project management and the sales role. 2 of our guys were out and I immediately jumped back in, and we had 4 calls in one day from general contractors or developers who said, hey, what was this last week? June 27th or something. Mm-hmm. It's the last week of June. We're breaking ground the 3rd week of July or the 4th week of July, and we need this cleared before then. And I'm just like, our crews are literally booked into September at this point.
I can't do this.
I don't know what to do here. And so it was funny to jump back into actually answering the phones and jumping on some things because I'm just seeing the constraints that we're running into right now. And it's almost exactly to your point. Like you have to decide which route you're going to go. Are you going to service residential clients? Are you going to service commercial? Or are you going to build 2 crews? There are a couple decisions that need to be made right there.
Yeah. And I feel like it's really hard to be great at multiple things and you got to pick your lane. And I feel like John Wilson talks about this a lot with like why they went down that residential service kind of route and they got really good at it. And then I know some really good new construction firms and that's like all they do, but I think it's very easy to get sucked into multiple things when you're trying to just get to that next revenue stage, and you got to almost be like, I'm not going to do this thing. I'm going to intentionally say no. And it's hard in the moment because you're like, this is a lot of money that I can make.
Yeah. And like, how many times do you feel like you have to say no in your entrepreneur? Let me ask this better. Since you got into Long Acre, how many times have you had to strategically say no to something like that?
The biggest example I can think of right off the bat is we brought in a plumbing manager, and he was like, hey, I've got this guy who owns all the major, like there's this major grocery store network in our area, and he owns all the relationships for the jetting, for the plumbing for it. It's like $1 million account, and he's owned it for 10 years, and he's willing to come over to the company if we can make it work for him. And I was thinking to myself, like, wow, $1 million would be great. It's like this consistent like lead flow for our customer base. Like I could keep the guys busy. We could buy a jetter, etc. But then I thought about it more. I was like, what happens if this guy just leaves in 6 months? Like, boop, there goes $1 million of the account. What does that look like with my revenue base? That's now 20 or 15% of my revenue. Like it just vanishes out of thin air. Do I really want to make that one large bet on that one large grocery store network? Or would I rather build up my jetting gradually with a lot of like medium-sized companies and get it to a place where then I eventually maybe bring in a larger national account versus just starting off with that one large account. And it's, if they call me at 1 a.m., I got to go to it. It's like, I am literally like their minion just to maintain that thing. And so I was like, no, I don't think we're ready for this. And I just told him straight up, like, I think he was a great guy, but not right now. And like, I think maybe a couple of years ago, or if I was still doing tech, I would have been like, oh, sexy opportunity. Let me go after it. Let's go and figure it out later. But I don't know. I think it could have really defocused us on the wrong things at the time.
So easy to just, especially like once you get into business and once your SEO and reviews are kicking off, it's like the phone starts to ring. That's not the issue. It's where do you actually focus to grow? And I feel like I'm right in that phase right now, because we could just go so many different ways with the company. And I just need to make a decision on what are we going to specialize in and be known for.
Are you thinking about like acquisitions versus like territorial expansion? Like, how are you thinking about building it versus just buying it and bringing it into the fold?
It's interesting because like the service we do is fire mitigation with forestry cleanup, right? Ton of dead wood all over in the forest that exists everywhere in the Rocky Mountain, United States, and even in the Western United States as you get over into California and whatnot. That's interesting because like it is an active problem and there's a lot of growing demand and need for it, especially with pressure from the insurance companies. So it's not like I can go buy a bunch of existing fire mitigation companies. Right now, we're in this unique phase of tree service companies are acknowledging that there is an opportunity. So they're shifting their models into being more of a forestry cleanup company. Or you're seeing excavation contractors be like, oh, I could use my equipment and go clean up.
Interesting.
So it's not like I could just go to Vail and there's Vail fire mitigation. I could just go buy them. Whereas, so if I want to replicate and grow, I have to make the bet that this thing is going to continue being an opportunity over the next several decades. And then I either have to go build it or I have to create some sort of licensing structure to work with other either existing tree contractors or excavation contractors to be like, hey, we've built the model. Here's the system.
How do you think about building a brand though? The interesting thing about buying the company that I did was they've been around 100 years. And I would say like within 10 minutes of us, 3/4 of the people probably have heard of us or made up their mind about us at this point. And it's like, when I'm thinking about the brand aspect of this, it's like I had these 2,000 customers that already use this a year and they knew our brand. And then I have to build it out in these new geographies. And when I'm thinking about growing, I'm constantly thinking about like, even if I were to bring in a new service to this particular like company, if that brand has already been there for 20 or 30 years, like how long would it take me to literally build that up in that particular little 10 or 15 minute pocket? Like how much money would I have to spend versus navigating that? But I don't know how deep of a rabbit hole you want to go down with acquisitions, but I feel like I always run into two things with them when I look at them. Like I either have this mom and pop shop where this guy's never thought about it until literally the past 6 months. And then he's got a retirement number in his head and you come to him and you're like, your business is actually worth this. And I thought it was worth 10 times that. And it's not even a conversation starter. And then you've got these people who are like, I want private equity money. And you're never going to compete with those people because you just don't have that kind of money to compete with the private equity companies. So it's like, how do you find the people in the middle that are actually realistic about their company, but are large enough to like have value to you? So I don't know. It's something I'm still trying to figure out.
So can you unpack that though? Like you're thinking, like you are going to grow through acquisition.
Eventually, yeah. We haven't yet, but yes.
And your reasoning there is because you have brand loyalty in that specific geographic region as
with the
opposed
acquired
to
company. Yes. Like what I've found is like most people when they're thinking about local services, they have a couple brands within 15 minutes of them that they're very loyal to. It could be like a food place. It could be like a home service type thing. I'll give you a good example. There's a town that's 30 minutes east of us in Quakertown. And there's this one HVAC company that I swear does half the business in Quakertown. They don't do it anywhere else. Just literally in this one little town that they are the dominant HVAC player. They never grow beyond it though. And what I think about a lot is like, how long would it take me to chip away at their market share with marketing? Like I've seen all these other companies try to do it and they have not gotten through their market share. So is it better for me just to go acquire them, have that brand, bring in my systems and operational infrastructure, versus there are some areas where I feel like there's so many new people moving into it that there's not a lot of brand loyalty yet, especially like resort type places where people maybe are more transient sometimes and they're coming and moving in. Like it's easier to do that versus places where there's not a lot of population growth happening. Like people are going to use who their parents used and their grandparents used. And that's like why people use us is like, I have people who've used us for 50 years. You know, like we'd have to severely mess up for them to move to another brand. And that's why no one's been able to get into our market share. They like market constantly. And for the Long Acres, we've just been around for like 100 years. And I think about that a lot when I'm thinking about, do I really want to drop this much in marketing spend versus acquisition spend? And how do I balance those two?
Yeah, it's interesting. And I believe like I'm so confident in our marketing funnel. Like I can flip ads on and then I've just got the system dialed at this point, right? And so I think my perspective is a little bit different than yours. And it's because of a complete difference in services and then multitude of different factors playing into geography, right? Whereas I don't necessarily think in my industry, it's as much about brand loyalty. And maybe I'm naive to this, so I'm going to put some thought to this. And I definitely will be challenged by this, Harvey. So thanks for challenging me. I don't necessarily think it's so much as brand loyalty as much as it is, hey, here's a problem right now. I need to solve this problem. Like the insurance company is actually telling my HOA that if we can get certified as an HOA, that this insurance company will insure all of these homes. And if not, we might be screwed sort of thing. So it's like, how quickly can we go?
Service basically type need.
Yeah. But the way I'm thinking about it is like, how can I craft our marketing funnel to go build the database, right? And then offer an upsell services, right? Because we do driveway repair. A lot of these homes have like gravel driveways, right? So it's almost like, how do you go build a database, get them in on a high ticket service in the beginning, then remarket to them later to do upsells? And is that model profitable enough to scale? So that's where I'm at. And I think where I'm at right now, if I had to answer this question, is like, you don't have that like long-term brand loyalty with a tree service company that you would with a plumbing company who's come and done a residential service call for the last 13 times that you've needed a plumber over the last 50 years and your family as well. I'm looking at it more as here's a problem right now. This needs to be solved. Who do I search for? But if there's an ad right there that comes through on my Facebook where it's get your property cleaned up, that's how we acquire the customer. That's my current thoughts right now. I could be completely wrong on it.
Do y'all do a lot of recurring service or like preventative maintenance type stuff in your industry? Or is it more, like you said, just all one-time type stuff?
It's one time. And that's why I've looked at how can I bolt on additional upsell services with the same equipment, right? So our fire mitigation equipment is a subset of specific equipment. What can we do on that property or that home with that same equipment for upsell opportunities? And there's a couple different services that we can bolt on with the same equipment, either while we're there or remarket to them in the future with the database.
Interesting. Huh. So it's like, how do you get a higher average ticket size base and how does your revenue per day basically and stuff like that?
Yeah. Simply just like, how much does this acquire? How much does it cost for us to acquire this customer on the front end? What's our average ticket size for that first job? And then what's the LTV if we bolt on additional services?
The metric I think a lot about is like touch points per year with the customer. It's like, how can I get these magic customers that use this for remodeling, electric, plumbing, and HVAC, like the 4? You know, it's almost like I want to throw a party for them when they do it. I want to bring them in for a barbecue or something. You used all 4 in a year. This is amazing. So it is interesting though, as we've been doing more like cross marketing and like targeted marketing and stuff, like I am seeing, we used to have like kitchen and bath was its own thing. Like it never interacted with anybody. And now I'm having those people actually buy HVAC systems from us. They're buying generators from us. They're doing like excavations and digs of plumbing and stuff. So it's like, how do you build that natural communication layer between these different divisions and the guys enough to, because it's hard when you're like a plumber and you're like trying to just get better at plumbing. You're like, okay, let me teach you about what do we do in electric? What do we do with generators? What do we do with kitchen and bath? Do they repair things? Do they only do installs? I don't know. Sometimes it's a little bit of information overload. So you have to think about like, how do you dumb it down and simplify it so that they can understand how to talk about it with people?
Do I have your business model correct in the sense that my assumption that home or bathroom remodeling is your highest ticket service?
Yes, we do about $2 million a year in remodeling, and then the services are the rest. So we're around 7 overall. as a business. But yeah, they're typically like, we'd go as high as like 200K in terms of remodeling projects, but most are in that 25 to 100K range, I would say. Yeah.
And then what's the average ticket size for plumbing?
Depends on how well we're spending a month, but we shoot for around 1,000, 1,500. It's much more like a volume game. If we have 5 or 6 really good projects in a month of kitchen and bath, we could do pretty well at it, versus I'm constantly thinking about like, how many completed jobs do we do in a month with plumbing? Okay, what was our average ticket? What was our close rate? It's much more like we talked about the marketing funnel. It's much more kind of in the weeds on the data and unpacking. Are they selling differently to Thumbtack and Angie's people? Do they do better with certain types of customers or certain types of estimates? Like I even got down to the level of with service typing, I can pull our flat rate price book and it's got like thousands of items, and I can look at by tech, are certain techs better at selling certain items than others? And like, why is that? Why is one guy selling at 80% for capacitors, but another guy's at 20%? Is that he just doesn't know how to talk about it? Is it a technical gap that he needs to be educated on? Is it he doesn't know how to like explain it to a customer in terms of being a necessity versus a want? Like, it's very interesting unpacking that and really thinking through like, how does that influence my coaching? How does that influence my training programs of technicians? And that's what I love about the services, is you can get like really in the nitty gritty with it, you know, and really unpack it.
Is your bathroom remodel in the same service area? And
yeah, it's
separate?
the same 1 hour area. I would say like we typically travel a little farther for the bathroom and kitchen remodels than we do the services, just because not as many people need it every year. So you have to kind of be more selective about who you go after. But like, one of the things we're trying to work on right now is we're thinking through, do we need to be more selective in our sales funnel? Because right now, the interesting thing about kitchen and bath is you literally get, everybody reaches out to you about handyman stuff. Like I had a guy reach out to us about making like a wooden like glove for like Thanos, like the Avengers movie, like with the rings. And he's like, can you create something like this? I'm like, I'm not like a wood shop. Like, what are you talking about? And then like, I'll have people reach out about repairing like a deck. It's like, we're not really a deck company. We can do it. So it's like, how do we get more selective in our funnel so I can focus my salespeople what really matters? But one of the interesting things I'm finding as I go through it though is we're really good at when someone comes in and they're like, I want to install a vanity in my bathroom. My 2 kitchen and bath guys have been at my company for 40 years. They started there in high school, and then they're in their late 50s. And they will talk someone from a vanity into doing like a $90,000 kitchen and bath. And so it's like, I could have told no to that vanity because it's a really small project and there's probably like 10 of them that are not a good use of our time. If I get that one that ends up being like a $90,000 project, should I just keep doing it? So it's like, how do you weigh what types of things can lead into bigger things versus like they're complete waste of your time to go out and quote the size you're at? And it's hard.
Have you seen any trends in similarities between that ideal customer profile of that person who does end up doing a $90,000 product?
Typically, people who've used us in the past, if they come in with something small, it can still lead into something bigger because we have a relationship with them. I'll tell you, the most interesting part is the spousal dynamics. So most of the time what happens is one of the two will come in and they really want to do the remodel, and the other one is really cheap and they don't want to do the remodel. And it's that person trying to convince the other person. But if you come in and they're both pretty aligned, massively influences that upselling at average ticket, because you're not having to fight this internal battle. Like they'll literally come in and look at samples and one of them is like, I don't know if we should do this. I don't know. And like those will typically never become bigger because they're constantly just fighting over price internally when you're talking to them. So that's one of the things we look at is like, how involved are the two decision makers in this? And like, how opinionated are they? And they talk to each other about the remodel.
Talk me through your funnel. Like when somebody reaches out on bathroom, is that just through your website? Is it call?
It's either they call us or website. I do some PPC ads for it. I do some mailers for it. We've done like community events and stuff. But then we like, we'll take it and our customer service team will book an appointment in Service Titan for the salesperson to go out. They go out, they quote it typically within a day or two. And then they have to come into the showroom to look at samples. And then after that, they'll sign a contract basically. So typically it takes anywhere from 1 to 3 months to actually sign like a large remodel.
Something I've been playing around with is thank you page and thank you page videos. And then also just like the application process. So like, how can we further qualify this customer? Because like right now, lead volume is not our issue. I realized that I was taking so much of my sales guys' time with calling unqualified leads. And yeah, we're basically like, we have just enough friction on our landing page to grab enough information to where it's not just like a, hey, get your name, phone, email. And then after we capture that, we direct them to another form that asks for some more information with some qualifying questions. And something I'm really interested in taking come from the digital marketing world is like, how can you embed thank you page videos with either those people who have been in the company and are great at the sales process, driving that, and then getting that next piece of information that tells you, okay, this is the type of person who meets the requirements of the last people who had bought $90,000 projects. And it sounds like where my head went whenever you're talking is that, how could you figure out if both spouses are aligned in that application process so that you know early on? That would be interesting to me.
I feel like often it's the why. If you ask them why they want it, it's really interesting. Like they'll say, it's just time to do it. Or they'll say things like, or we'll ask them like, what other projects are you thinking about this year? And if they're like, well, I'm thinking about doing this whole like new deck on my home and this remodel, I'll think to myself, okay, we got 2 conflicting projects happening. They're going to have to sequence them. Like, let's think through strategically, like how much time we place into this kind of funnel. But I don't know. I feel like with remodeling, it's very like, you have to like almost craft this like overwhelming want in them. And it's a very visual trade. So you have to build this, I call it almost like the 10-year-old dream, where a girl is like laying out her dream home and she's like sketching it out almost. And you have to like evoke this imagery of what is the dream kitchen that you've been thinking about since you were a little kid? What is the dream bath? And it's, you have to create this sense of nostalgia and want in someone versus like with services. It's like you said, like the HVAC is out, like we got to get out there fast. They don't really care how sexy it looks or like what the equipment looks like. They don't care about any of that. Even though we try to talk about the technical parts, they really don't care. It's fix this problem for me now that I can have AC in my house. And I don't know, it's been interesting just thinking through like the marketing funnels and stuff. But one of the things I think a lot about the remodeling that I learned from tech is, and it goes back to your thank you page video thing, is how do you create moments of delight and magic throughout your process? Like one of the things Gusto does for like our payroll is whenever you're running it in between pages, they have this dancing pig and he's like wearing a different outfit every time. And I always thought that was like, I laugh every time I see him. This is stupid. Like, why is this payroll thing of this dancing pig? But it makes me smile. And then when they send their emails, when I'm getting paid, they got the confetti emoji.
Yes.
And it like, it's these little psychological things that like make you just warmer and happier as you're dealing with them. And I think there's a lot of little things you can do as you're thinking through this. Like with your thank you page video, there's like a bank I use. And when you click on the wrong link and they haven't linked it, it shows, hey, we're sorry that this link doesn't work. Here's a game you can actually play. They built a little game on their little website link that doesn't work. And then it keeps them on the website. And then they end up just staying on there and using it anyway. And it's like little things like that. It's like, how do you build engagement and retention and I guess loyalty with somebody?
You're the second tech founder I have talked to who has specifically mentioned Gusto and the confetti. And I agree. They do an amazing job of just making it feel fun.
Payroll's
Hooray.
not fun. No one likes doing payrolls, but it's like, how can you make it something that like you don't dread when you're doing it every week? You know?
And it's as simple as like those pages where it's, hooray, you're getting paid today. And it's, yeah, hooray, I'm getting paid today. So it's like, how can you build that on for your website visitors? It's hooray, we're here to clean up your forest. Or like, hey, how about the vision? What vision do you have? Our goal is to take you from, you have a vision in your head of what you want your property to look like. We're just the intermediary. We're here to take you from what it is to your ideal vision. Tell us a little bit about your vision. Right. And then we try to ask some specific questions to get clarity on that. And essentially it's just telling us everything that they've thought through about different services we offer. And it's further qualifying them. So if they're filling that out after the initial lead form, that lead is super hot when we get that second form come in. They're ready to go based on the qualifying questions that we've asked. Anyway, it's like my head is up as a marketer. I'm going to just, man, how do you have the thank you page where, okay, picture your dream kitchen or your dream bathroom out of the three, which one resonates most with it, right? Or the
Yeah.
design styles. And it's like they're clicking through the funnel and you're just capturing and like almost walking them through what it can look like at the end.
Yeah, there's two things that work like that I want to do more of. One, I know a lot of companies with Service Titan, they'll take like team pictures and do a little biography. And then when they do the job appointment confirmation, they'll send it out. It's, Rick is coming out to do your plumbing today. It's got his picture and it's got his biography and it's like his little hobbies and interests. And that's humanizing this plumber that's coming out. And then the other thing we've been doing a lot that's been helping kitchen bath is I taught my managers how to use like ChatGPT, and they'll take a picture of the kitchen, ask the homeowner to describe what they want it to look like, and then they'll show them literally the image live in the first appointment. And they'll be like, is this your dream kitchen? They're like, oh, I actually want it in this different color. And then they'll change it. And they're like, yeah, like, that's what I want. But it's like they're seeing magic happen in front of them, and it creates this visual marker that they can ground them in what they're trying to do with you.
This episode is brought to you by Dialed In Bookkeeping. Ben and his team provide bookkeeping services, job costing reports, and accurate financial information for the home services industry. If you're looking to keep your books up to date, visit dialedinbookkeeping.com/OWNROPS. When you use this specific landing page, you'll get your first 3 months 50% off.
Definitely. Well, and the possibilities of where we're at with tech right now, there's so much low-hanging fruit in home services. But as you further build out the process and the system, I love the concept of, hey, here's Rick. He's coming to your house today. One, it just humanizes it, like you said. Two, it reduces this anxiety that a lot of people have when it's, my wife's at home by herself today, I'm at work, right? We have somebody coming. I don't know anything about the company, but we needed our house sprayed for pest control today. Like, I got two young daughters at home. Like, it reduces this anxiety whenever you can humanize that, right? And I think that's a big piece for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Hardy, this is fun. We could probably go on for hours here, but Saturday morning, and I know you got to get to the rest of your day. So, yeah, thanks for being on. This has been super fun.
Yeah. And I love to connect offline about just Facebook marketing. And it sounds like you've been pretty big on kind of that. And I have failed miserably at meta advertising. I'm better at the Google side than the meta side. So it sounds like you've really mastered those kind of video ads at lead gen stuff. So I'd love to talk more about that.
Cool. Yeah. Happy to do so. Anything else you'd like to share with our audience before people who are building home service businesses?
No, if you want to find us, we're just Long Acre Company. We're in Valley, Pennsylvania, near Allentown, and the main line in Philly. And our website's just longacreco.com. Yeah.
Fantastic. Listeners, thanks so much for listening to another episode of the Owner Ops Podcast. Every week we publish an episode about home service business owners building great businesses in their local communities. Publish episodes on Fridays, and then we send out a newsletter with a summary and a recap of the high-level learning lessons and bullet points that we discussed in the interviews. Send that out on Saturdays. If you haven't signed up yet, you can sign up for that newsletter at ownerops.com/newsletter. That's OWNROPS.com/newsletter. Thanks again for listening. Don't forget, work hard, do your best, and never settle for less.